Have you ever wondered how magnificent temples seem to rise out of nowhere in the middle of a jungle? Or how epic stories can travel thousands of miles and take on a new life? Well, that's not fiction. It's actually the story of one of history's most amazing cultural exchanges. How ancient India left this deep, lasting mark on the huge, diverse region of Southeast Asia.
So the big question is, how on earth did this happen? How did all these ideas, beliefs, and artistic styles travel across the sea? And not through war or conquest, but just through connection. How did it create something so new and so enduring? Let's dive in and find out.
Okay, so our story doesn't kick off with armies or invasions. Nope, it starts with merchants, traders, and the wide open sea. The very first connections were all about trade. But believe me, what these travelers carried in their heads was way more valuable than any spices or textiles in their ships.
And we're talking way back, around the 1st century AD. But here's the thing, this wasn't some one-off event. It was more like a slow, steady current that flowed for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that slow pace is what allowed Indian culture to gently weave itself into the very fabric of Southeast Asian societies. But this cultural wave, it went so much further than just the marketplace. It actually touched the very soul of the region. We're talking about its beliefs, its spirituality, and of course, the incredible monuments they built to honor all of it. And this influence really traveled down two main spiritual highways. First, you had Buddhism, which inspired all these new architectural styles, like the iconic bell-shaped stupa, and introduced practices like meditation. At the same time, you had Hinduism pouring into the region's art, its mythology, and its foundational stories with this whole pantheon of gods and epic tales.
And you can literally see this influence carved right into the stone. Indian architectural signatures basically became the hallmarks of the region's temples. We're talking about things like using mandalas, those sacred geometric designs that represent the cosmos, in the actual layout of the temples, in the construction of these grand, elaborate gateways, and of course the impossibly intricate carvings that just seem to make the stone come alive.
So that brings us to the art itself. This cultural wave didn't just bring new deities, it brought entirely new ways of looking at the world and, expressing that creativity.
And here's what's so important to get. It wasn't just Indian art in general. The influence came from a very specific golden age, India's Gupta period. This was an era famous for its harmony, its elegance, and its idealized forms. The whole aesthetic of that time traveled and found a brand new, vibrant home right in Southeast Asia. So, what did this new artistic language actually look like? Well, it meant a bigger focus on naturalism, which brought this new sense of life to how people and animals were depicted. It also led to gods and goddesses being portrayed everywhere in these serene, powerful forms. And religious scenes from the epics became central themes. Basically, art became one of the main ways to tell these incredible stories. But the influence wasn't only visual. It also fundamentally shaped the words people spoke and the epic stories they passed down for generations.
The impact on language was just enormous. Sanskrit, the ancient language of India, literally wove itself into the local languages. You can still find its loanwords all over the place today. But it was more than just new words. For over 1,000 years, Sanskrit was the language of scholars, of royalty, of religion. It held that status all the way up to the 19th century.
And just think about the power of a great story. India's huge foundational epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, they made the journey across the sea. But they weren't just copied word for word. No way. They were embraced, they were retold, they were adapted, and they became the foundation for countless new local versions. It's a perfect example of a culture not just being received, but being completely reborn. So as we start to pull all these different threads together, you can really start to see the full picture, this profound, lasting legacy that was born from this incredible exchange. When you just step back and look at the scope of it all, from religion and architecture to art, language, and literature, the impact was absolutely massive. But I think the most important thing to remember is that this was never about replacing the local cultures. It was a deep, transformative fusion that created the unique, rich, and beautiful cultural tapestry that we see in Southeast Asia today. And that leaves us with a final thought, right? This ancient story is such a powerful reminder that culture is always moving. It's always dynamic. It blends, it changes, and it creates something totally new. It kind of makes you wonder,
In our own super connected world today, where are the next great cultural fusions happening right now? And what enduring legacies will they have left behind 1,000 years from now?